Ladies and gentlemen, good evening, everybody, and welcome to On the Sports Lines. This is our Sports and Society episode part 2. I'd like to say do because it makes me feel fancy. Tonight, we're going to mix in a little bit of reopening talk for basketball, the lack of reopening talk in baseball, and we'll mix in the very important BLM developments in football. With me is Jay Kaplan and Anthony Strait, as always. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening, Rabbi.
Hey, what's going on?
And with a nod to the man who is always behind the boards, Nolan Toppin, our opener tonight is a sport that actually is currently running right now, Nascar. Last Wednesday, the sport made its most inclusive step, ever. The sport has banned the Confederate flag from all events, whether it be displayed by the drivers or brought in by the fans. It was an issue brought to the forefront by Bubba Wallace, NASCAR's only black driver. The move also brings the symbol of a predominantly Southern sport and totally eliminates it. And then around this discussion, we're going to also get into some of the sports ramifications, pretty much eliminating the Confederacy. You can have it in the history books, but we don't want it in our sports. It's a bold move for everything. Jay, let's start with you with thoughts.
Yeah, if you're a casual fan who, say, only tunes in to the Daytona 500, then you really cannot comprehend just how much of a watershed historic moment this is for NASCAR. Which was a sport that was born out of good old country boys in fast cars trying not to get caught by revenue agents as they ran moonshine and came of age on dirt tracks across the South. If you think about it, guys, this sport has been linked to the Confederate flag since jump. The two were seemingly tied together in an unbreakable Gordian knot. Think about this, guys. NASCAR tried to ban the flag in 2015 after a white supremacist murdered 9 black people in Charleston, South Carolina. They called on fans to leave the flag at home, not bring them to the racetrack. Even Dale Earnhardt Jr., the sport's most popular driver, was leading the charge saying it does nothing for anybody for that flag to be flying here. I don't see any reason. It belongs in the history books, and that's about it. And it didn't work. The flags were as prominent as the folks who denied that it was a sign of racial oppression. But if you think about it, guys, the demographics of NASCAR have changed, not only in terms of the fans, but in terms of the drivers as well. Not only are there less and less of those good old Southern boys, there's Bubba Wallace, the only black driver in this sport, who called out this week, for NASCAR to ban displays of the flag following the protests. And once again, Brian France, who runs NASCAR, and the rest of NASCAR got behind him. If you think about it, we had a week where Confederate statues were coming down in cities across the country. The U.S. Army was saying it would consider renaming bases that had been named for Confederate leaders. We all know who put the kibosh on that, and the Army backed down for the moment. And now it was time for the flag to go. We should not be able to have an argument over that. Wallace said, it's a thick line we can't cross anymore. But NASCAR was one of the last bastions of a time in this country that has long needed to have been put behind it and relegate anything from it from that time to the history books. Look, the South lost the Civil War. You guys they don't want to hear it down there, but they did over 150 years ago. So it's time to stop celebrating soldiers, statesmen, and anything else related to traitors who were engaged in open rebellion against this nation for a right to keep a heinous practice like slavery alive. Good on you, NASCAR. You got it right the second time around.
You know what? When they announced that they were going to ban a Confederate flag, I just said, about time. What took them so long? Let's be honest. If there was anything hypocritical that I heard over the last 4 years, when NASCAR fans complain about football players taking a knee when you're also riding around with Confederate flag decals in your car and basically celebrating what is basically treason, because we know that the Confederacy tried to lead the United States, which pretty much started the Civil War in the first place. Look, somebody need to tell Ray Cicerelli, did I pronounce his last name correctly, that it's okay if you want to keep his beliefs, whatever the case is, but I'm quite sure NASCAR can find someone who can drive around, make right turns for 3 hours, and not win a race. But you know what? It's about time. Look,
I can do that, by the way.
My parents grew up in the South when the Confederacy was pretty much the Confederate flag is everywhere. Like you go to Atlanta of all places, and it's very prominent there. You gotta understand that times are changing, society is changing, and that you got that in NASCAR you do have an African American race car driver, Bubba Wallace, who's the only one there but also it's to open up more doors and avenues for more inclusivity as far as our fans. My niece is getting into NASCAR. She's a hockey fan, but now she's into racing now. So I think it was about time. Like NASCAR is finally like, okay, we wanted to do this 5 years ago. By the way, this week, what is the 5-year anniversary of those shootings in South Carolina? So it was like, okay, finally we see what's going on as far as Confederate statues coming down. Now it's about time we change. We change along with society. I think it's a good job by NASCAR. I mean, look, I tell for the fans who are angry and complaining about, oh, what we gonna do about our history? Pick up a book. I mean, come on, Google search.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's exactly what Trevor Noah said. Your history's not going away. Pick up a book. You can go read about it.
They're not going to erase history books in any way, shape, or form. No. It's still there, and people are going to tell you about it. They may not be proud of it, and it's not going to be memorialized. That's a bad way to say it. But it's not going to be.
No, that's the exact word. Rabbi, memorialize is the exact correct word, because that is what the former Confederate states in the South have been doing for the last 150 years. They can't let go of it.
Yeah, and the one thing that I've noticed is NASCAR is such, again, as I mentioned, a Southern-based sport that I think there will take a little bit of time to adjust to this, because there still are, I wouldn't say racist, but there still are people who are proud of their Southern heritage around NASCAR. Mm-hmm. And another thing that I've noticed, and they've started to get noticed in a bunch of different things, is the SEC. The SEC is a conference that is built on those same types of fans. They have a national following in football and basketball. They still have some of a following with Kentucky. So the adjustment to this, whether we have sports or not, if we have college football or college basketball or not in 2020 and 2021, is something that I'm really ready to see, because this is a new world out there, and I think the George Floyd killings kind of brought a lot of stuff into the forefront. Tomorrow is Juneteenth, which is going to be pretty much a national holiday almost everywhere now, a recognized holiday that I don't think a lot of people knew about until 2020. This is going to be a very watershed moment in sports history. Just all of these little developments that are going on, and it's one after the other after the other. All right.
Rabbi, before we jump into the main show, can we close this segment on a slightly lighter note?
There better be a bunch of lighter notes tonight, because I've got so many of the non-light notes in the last 2 weeks.
Let's close the opener with this. Y'all heard about the part-time driver who quit NASCAR in protest over the banning of the Confederate flag? You guys heard about this guy?
Yes, I mentioned him.
As somebody tweeted and a couple of other people posted, I think Trevor Noah among them, that dude had as many wins in NASCAR as the Confederacy did in the Civil War.
That would be 0. Also, one fact, I don't think just any special person can make left turns, but I'd like to try. I would like to try. I don't usually
make going at 200 miles an hour. Don't leave that out.
I can still make left turns. All right, moving on to the big 3 sports, which we'll focus on mostly tonight. And let's start on with America's #1 hated commissioner. Is it Roger Goodell? No, it's actually not. Old news. Is it Gary Bettman? Wrong. Way in the past. It's baseball commissioner Rob Manfred. After a tentative agreement on reopening logistics way back on March 26th, over 2 months ago, there have been a whopping 6 proposals, and that's not counting the 2 that just happened this week, rejected for full salary and truncated season details. 3 deals rejected by the owners, 3 by the players' union. Rob Manfred said Wednesday, June 10th, that baseball would absolutely 100% play this season. And then 5 days later, Manfred said he was not confident there would be a season. He should really go into being a weatherman, because usually you just hedge your bets all the time. Anyway, Players Union head Tony Clark has said multiple times, and the owners have said multiple times to the Players Union, that everybody has negotiated in bad faith. Take a shot
Yeah.
every time that's said in this segment. This is a disaster, an unmitigated disaster. Let's place blame like we should. Anthony, start with you.
You know what? There's plenty of blame on both sides, but we already know in these negotiations, it's always the fans that are the biggest losers. I mean, you think about this: we're in the middle of a pandemic. We're in the middle of the worst economic situation this country has ever faced since the Great Depression. We are seeing civil unrest everywhere. The last thing fans want to hear about is billionaire owners and millionaire players whining over money. That's like the last thing any sports fan wants to deal with right now. And it's both sides. So you think about it, the players want to play more. They want to play more games, which because of the pandemic may not be possible. Then you have the owners being greedy and selfish, and in some cases wouldn't mind having the season be canceled completely. I mean, the only thing that's missing is these negotiations being broadcast on Disney Plus, because it is the most comical thing I have ever seen in the worst possible time. You think about how baseball has been such a fabric of America, this country during its tough times. You think about baseball going on through World War II at the urging of FDR. You think about how a part baseball played in 9/11. We just saw a documentary about the home run chase in 1998 and how that captivated the nation between
which, by the way, kind of, as you mentioned, kind of made sure that 94 was pretty much completely wiped off the map, as fabricated as that was. Keep going.
Yeah, and now we're seeing kind of a repeat of 1994, and we're seeing players and owners disagreeing. And now, even today, earlier this afternoon, we saw 60 games saying the players get their full prorated salaries, and the Players Association comes back with 70 games. It's like, can you just cut it down to 65 and get it over with? Like, what's the point of this back and forth? And you think about this: you have minor league players who are out of jobs right now. Right now, small market teams are pretty much suffering at this point. And you had those same fans who would normally be packing stadiums at a time like this, pretty much don't even know if they're going to be able to provide for families. It's been like this for the last few months, and all you're hearing is again, you're hearing greed, pretty much bring down the American sport at a time where maybe America needs something to kind of rally behind, and we've always rallied behind sports anyway. But in the case of baseball, it's like, okay, it's supposed to be America's pastime, and we don't have that right now to kind of get through really a tough situations going in this nation, and it's because of the greed on both sides.
Yeah, Anthony, it's unfortunately, to borrow a line from the Motown song, it's the same old song, but there is no different meaning because nobody's gone. Baseball, as usual, cannot see the forest for the trees. They are so focused on those trees, the Union and the League digging in their heels, fighting over every little thing and even every big thing, that they cannot or just will not see the forest, which is the golden opportunity that was put in front of them for goodwill, the chance to own the sports stage, to remind this country that they truly are the fabric of America and how they have helped heal the nation throughout history when times have been bad like this. I mean, think about it, guys. The owners keep crying poverty even when, and some are even on board with not having a season, all when their fan base is losing jobs left and right. They're dealing with Corona. They're dealing with the economy. They're dealing with all the protests. They have no escape from anything because going on in life right now. The players want to play, and yes, they have dug in with regards to getting paid their full prorated salaries for whatever the length of the season is. The owners keep trying to move the goalposts, guys, and I'm sorry, but owners can't sell poverty when they're signing record TV deals. Turner Sports, 7 years, $3.29 billion. I mean, when a player's career is over, it's over. The owner will still be the owner, and they know they're going to make their real money when they sell because they always do. So to me, the money the owners are haggling over right now when compared to their overall collective wealth is couch change. And yet that's all they can see. But it's typical of the owners, guys. They don't release how much money they do make, and they do make money. Let's get that right. So right here and now. but they always scream long and loud about any losses they claim they're taking. I mean, yeah, look, the union is as solidified as it's ever been and adamant that they're not going to let the owners push them around. They aren't going to allow things agreed to for this pandemic truncated season to be used against them next year or in the next CBA if revenues take longer than 2 years to recover. And guess what? It will, especially since their average salary has declined in each of the past 2 years while revenues across the sport have been rising to record levels. Again, owners can't cry poverty. Look, instead of both sides coming together for the good of the game and the good of the country and setting up a one-time only agreement so they can get this season, whatever form it takes, off the ground in a reasonable time frame so they can play a reasonable facsimile of a season, they decided to use this time as the opening salvo in the fight over the next CBA. And all this is going to do is damage the sport, not just for this year, no matter how things shake out this year, but for 2021 and beyond. Look, the league has been adamant that the owners will not bear the losses they say they'll take by paying the players their full prorated salaries. The players don't want to subsidize their bosses down year when they see no bonuses in good years. As a quote from a team executive kind of stood out for me. Here's what I see. I see people really upset at baseball who say a pox on all their houses in a time of great need with great social unrest. All you cared about was fighting over money. Look, granted, in one of the latest proposals, the league seemed to overcome the big obstacle by agreeing to pay the players their full prorated salaries. But based on the differences of opinion, guys, especially, what happened Tuesday, I don't know how they're going to get this worked out to have any type of reasonable season, especially if they have to have a hard cutoff before they expect Corona to ramp up again. Baseball is still precariously close to that cliff that Jason Stark implored them to not drive the sport over. And as I tweeted last week, guys, at a time when the country needs baseball to help bring us together, the players and owners continue to fight the same old battles. And as Ken Rosenthal of The Athletic wrote, if the earth indeed ends up scorched, then everyone will get burned. Ken, I couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, everybody will get burned, but here's the thing. Unlike 1994, here are two things that are completely different. Number one, baseball is not king anymore. Nope. The NFL is king right now, and it probably always will be until the end of time. Locally, baseball is kind of important in some spaces, but if you want to think nationally, the NFL completely kills it. And honestly, baseball ain't number two because the NBA, especially in the Michael Jordan, LeBron James era, has skyrocketed past them. It's kind of a joke. And also, no social media back in 1994. This is really the first social media labor strike. And now not only are you just having millionaires and billionaires fight all the time, because again, we love to see that. What you also we'd love to see that. We always love to see that. What you're seeing is a PR campaign on both sides. A lot of people thought the blame was pretty much similar before last week. And then Manfred goes and basically says, oh, well, the owners want to see us and the players don't. And then the where and when campaign starts. A lot of people tweeted along, Max Scherzer being one of them. And then the players union is kind of saying, 60 games is too short. We want 10 more games. Are you kidding me? Just come up with a number. And if they don't come up with a number, baseball is not only dead for 2020, baseball is probably going to go down a lot farther in the national landscape. Baseball cannot afford a stoppage, especially this season. The PR hit is tremendous. And if it doesn't happen now, as you said, baseball is going to be really off a cliff.
And think about this. It wasn't not too long ago that they were talking about starting the season on Independence Day, July 4th. Yeah. Wow, has times changed, and now you wonder if there's going to be any kind of a season.
Right. I mean, and that's what we're talking about here is the fact that they missed the opportunity, and they could have used this, recognized this is an outlier situation, put together an agreement just for this season to deal with all these things that are out of their control with a tacit agreement that it's for this season and this season only. It will have no bearing on anything, any negotiations going forward. If they had done that and agreed to it, guys, we would have a 100-odd game season that would have started on July 4th, and baseball would have shown that once again why it is, part of the fabric of the country and how it is out in front when it comes to healing the country in bad times. But once again, like I said at the top, they can't see the forest for the trees.
The fabric of America, though, must mean a full prorated salary, and as you said before, baseball is basically claiming poverty, and that's not even the case. And I think, honestly, in the back of everyone's mind, at least there was a report out that 8 owners said, "I don't care if there's a season." I think that number is more. Ironically enough, the Wilpons have apparently have already been said to not be one of those groups, which is probably the shocker of the century. But I think overall, owners would rather not pay the players in 2020 if they're not going to have the revenue. Baseball, by the way, is a clusterfuck. Stay tuned. In the last few weeks, let's talk about people who have sort of plans. That would be the NBA. They have come up with a restart plan to finish the long 2019-2020 season. The season would begin July 30th in a huge bubble at the Wide World of Sports in Orlando, Florida, home of a rising number of coronavirus cases, but we'll talk about that later. 22 teams have been invited. Sorry, Knicks, you suck. 13 from the West, 9 from the East, and anyone 6 games back of the 8th spot in each conference was invited. The season would go simply like this. 8-game regular season to finish up for all teams. A very, very, very likely play-in series for the 8th seed in both conferences, and then the regular playoffs, best of 7 from round of 16 to the NBA Finals. Season would end around mid-October. The real fall classic. I love it. A lot to unpack here. Let's start with Jay.
I got to tell you, in terms of the on-court stuff, I'm fine with it. Look, the West having 13 teams and the East only 9 is a little lopsided, but based on the extended playoff drama they want to have before the final 16, I'm not going to nitpick it, even if it means we have to get through those 8 regular season games before we can start, eliminating teams and then having the play-in round before we get to the real playoffs. And even if, there's any truth to the Zion conspiracy, wink, wink.
Oh, it's not a conspiracy. It's 100% true. We'll talk about that in a second.
I knew he was going to go there. The fact that in the end we're going to have the usual 4 rounds of playoffs, a 7-game series is what matters most, and we're going to get that. So we will crown a legit champion. Here's the thing, though. It's the health protocols that have to be locked down, and the players having to really adhere to them to keep the risks that are already inherent in this endeavor to a minimum. That has me concerned. They have to maintain adherence to these protocols in each of the 6 phases that started on phase 1 on June 12 and will continue through phase 6, which could end, as the rabbi said, sometime it starts on 7/30, but, could end sometime in October at the rate we're going. Here's the thing. Teams are only allowed 35 members on campus, and if you have 17 players on the roster, because they're allowing, extra players, that, you're not going to have a lot of room left for staff. Teams have to travel with 1 senior executive, and chances are that's the GM, and most of the GMs have said they will be in Orlando. You're going to have 1 athletic trainer, a strength and conditioning coach, equipment manager, and team security officials. Now, no surprise, these restrictions have caused some consternation with basketball operations staffers. You're adding players, but you're decreasing the amount of support staff that takes care of them, which is going to make for tough decisions when staff on who actually gets brought to Orlando. Look, I will give the NBA credit for making as much of the available technology there is to monitor the health of everybody's going to be there. Multiple rounds of testing. The NBA is creating this league health platform to register test results, monitor symptoms, do screenings for everyone on campus. They're giving everybody a smart thermometer to record temperatures. They're going to supply each campus member with a pulse oximeter to take blood oxygen levels on a daily basis. And they're also going to be, players and staff are going to be involved in a contact tracing program managed by the league and or the county health departments that are in Orlando. Testing, a whole lot of follow-up with confirmed cases. They have a quarantining protocol in place for anybody who tests positive. The one that's going to cause the most problem, guys, and the one that could be broken the most if it's not monitored properly, is keeping all personnel inside the Disney campus. I mean, the NBA's figured this is going to be the tough one, so they've already coming down with, some disciplinary actions, and they're tasking one team to have a watchdog to keep people in place. Here's the thing, guys. All the other leagues are going to be watching how the NBA pulls this off, because even with the restrictions and limitations, this is still a risky endeavor, and you add in that players are not going to be seeing their family for upwards of 30 or more days, depending on how deep their team goes in the playoffs, there's a lot of sacrificing going to be going on here for them to get through and finish up this season. I wish them luck and good health all the way through to the handing out of the Larry O'Brien Trophy on sometime in October.
Anthony, before you go, by the way, let's mention the one most important health and safety protocol. Any card games must be flushed and thrown out immediately after they're done.
No deck of
I thought when you said which would cause the most problems, I thought you thought that would cause the most problems. Very important stuff, Anthony.
Look, I get that they're inviting 22 teams to the initial 16 that would have made the playoffs anyway, but I don't understand, like, why are we inviting Sacramento and Phoenix? I don't get that. Like, they're willing to – why are we inviting why are we inviting the Wizards who are 16 games under 500 and had no shot of making the playoffs? Like, it just makes no sense. Like, I get it. It could be money. Look, you get New Orleans in. I understand that because you want Zion to be on the national stage. You want to feature him a little bit. He did not play most of the season before the suspension in the first place. And Portland, I understand, because they were within 3 games of the 8th and final playoff spot out west. So those two teams make sense. But then you look at, like I said, like the Spurs, the Kings, the Suns and Wizards, who had no shot of making the playoffs. And it was only, 3 weeks left, but a month and a half left in the season anyway. It didn't make no sense. However, they had just went to the 16 teams that would have made the playoffs, there would have been less teams and less players and personnel that they would have had to worry about as far as player safety in this bubble. But like I said, I get it. I understand. Like the ratings, how good that would be. But I just feel like, you know what? You could have just skipped the whole charade, went to the 16 team, and also you could have played that in more of a reasonable timetable than kind of drawn out 8-game regular season and a play-in for the 8th and 9th seed. It just seems like kind of overkill, if you ask me, as far as how they're gonna restart the season.
And as someone who loves overkill, I love the fact that there's 22 teams actually coming to the bubble.
You would.
Sacramento was one of the hotter teams in the league before the stoppage of play. Anybody within 6 games deserves to have a shot. I know Mark Cuban had said that he thinks all 30 teams should have been invited because of the loss of money on some of the cases. Even for God's sakes, even the Knicks are going to lose.
No, I do not want to see the Knicks. Okay,
no one wants to see the Knicks, but I mean, it also shows, by the way, that the East is pathetic. That even though the Wizards are 16 games under 500, they qualified at the standards to making it over here. That's why everybody but one team is invited in the West. And this is a ton of money for the league. And yes, they try to make sure in every single possible way that Zion gets in at least for 8 games. And again, if they're within 4 games of the 8th spot, they're going to go into a playoff series in which the 9th place team would have to win twice before the 8th place team wins once. And remember, guys, you're all going to be tested on this later. Anyway, some last thoughts before we continue. Number 1, there is a 1-800 number that you can call if you see a violation of protocol in the Disney campus. Number 2, there will be allowed to golf. You do get access to the great Disney golf courses on there. By the way, please note, this was a 150-page manifesto that got released on Tuesday. 150 pages. So if you were wondering if they would leave no stone unturned, the original draft had 150 from what everyone had told me. So
original draft. Okay.
Before we go, what song would you play? It apparently I think Jay referenced the proximity alarm. I would say "Don't Stand Too Close to Me" should play by The Police. I know Yahoo had said "Next Too Close" from 1995. I think I want to hear every single time. I want a Twitter dedicated to every violation that every time the proximity alarm goes, I would have a 24/7 network come along to make sure we find out about the proximity alarm. That's how starved I am for sports right now. All right, moving on to some.
So close to me.
Yeah, see? Anyway, moving on to a lot of anger between me and Anthony as we talk about Kyrie Irving. This season still has skeptics, but noted friend of the show, Kyrie Irving, originally voiced questions of the season restarting in a player rep call to vote on the season restarting. Note, that vote was 28-0, and guess who didn't abstain? Yeah, you guessed it. However, last Friday, Kyrie hosted a call with 80 to 100 fellow NBA players saying that they should sit out the season. Again, you know, the one that Kyrie voted to restart. Players like Avery Bradley of the Lakers have sided with Kyrie's mindset, and players like Patrick Beverley of the Clippers have not. Anthony, what say you?
The first thing I would say is I really try to give Kyrie over the benefit of the doubt. I've been hard on him the last 2 years.
He actually did. He actually did.
I actually tried this week. Yeah, that's right. I tried this week. But this is a case of Kyrie being Kyrie all over again. First off, number one, you were all in for the season to start, and not only that, the moment some of the questions he asked are probably the dumbest things I have ever heard. He asked if you can drink alcohol beverages. Can he use the team facilities? First off, he's injured. So injured players are not going to be invited to Orlando to be in this bubble in the first place. So once he got the idea that he was not going to go, a few days later, now he becomes overnight social activist. Now look, I have no problem with Kyrie Irving if he wants to raise awareness for social issues, but the NBA can do both, okay? You can do your job and raise awareness. We're talking about the league who have players, I Can't Breathe and Black Lives Matter T-shirts during warm-ups after the Eric Garner incident a few years back. The late Kobe Bryant himself wore a T-shirt that his wife tweeted out last week. This is a league that brought that brought the Trayvon Martin situation to public focus. Remember, the Miami Heat took a photo, everyone wearing a hoodie, to bring that to attention. You talk about the myth that Martin Luther King Day and the fact that the Memphis Grizzlies every year host a nationally televised game that brings attention to the civil rights movement, the civil rights museum, the sanitation strike, which actually one of the city edition uniforms was based on the I Am a Man slogan from those times. I mean, the NBA, probably better than any league, has done a phenomenal job of raising awareness of social issues. And in fact, they are probably the one league, the one sport that is in the best position to do that. And I feel like with all the eyes on Orlando, you can't just pass that up. Not to mention, it would be a total violation of the collective bargaining agreement if you decide not to play at all. And in case of Kyrie Irving, I'm like this. Look, maybe he find out that he couldn't be there. He couldn't invite Cinderella over for a sleepover. I don't know. But look, this is the case of Kyrie Irving. Look, I try to give him the benefit of the doubt, but he does this all the time. Remember when he did not join his team. He didn't join his team for road games this season. Now all of a sudden he wants to join his team in a bubble where he can't even leave the campus for 3 months. Are you kidding me? Look, Rabbi, please take the conversation away from me because I'll go on all night about Kyrie Irving.
You're putting right here, by the way. I can do it. I can do it. Trust me.
I'm taking it away. And I got the ball now. So, look, here's the thing. I understand what Kyrie was looking to do from a keep the movement thing going and not wanting the wave to dissipate once games got underway. And I did appreciate Dwight Howard clarifying that at no time on that call did anyone suggest that those who want to play shouldn't. But, Kyrie then tossing out the whole players should start their own league thing was right up there to me with this flat earth stuff, which is why it's hard not to roll your eyes when you first hear things come out of his mouth. I also found it very telling, guys, that LeBron James was not on that call. Now, sources say the reason he wasn't is because he believes that chasing another NBA title will not prevent him from continuing to inspire change. He's always felt he can make his mark both on and off the court at the same time, and his history and his own legacy has proven he can. So here's the other thing that kind of jumped out to me. It was comments by Austin Rivers on his Instagram, and these are his quotes. Us coming back will be putting money in all our NBA players' pockets. With this money, you could help out even more people and continue to give, more importantly, your time and energy towards the Black Lives Matter movement, which I'm 100% on board with, because change needs to happen and injustice has been going on too long. But also, not to mention, there are plenty of NBA players I know who need them paychecks. 99% of the NBA hasn't made the money a guy like Kyrie has. And that's something that should not be tossed aside. Look, granted, you have NBA stars that have tremendous followings on social media, but the size and scope of their audience are significantly greater when they're playing on television. The standard broadcasted NBA games gives plenty of opportunity to make symbolic gestures which will reach beyond those who already follow them to those who specifically do not. It can force people stuck in their own information loops to finally see and hear what the players are saying. Look, Orlando has the potential to serve as a town hall type meeting situation where players can speak out about this movement and strategic changes. The networks and their TV crews are already there, guys. So the players in the NBA, honestly, should push their broadcast partners to televise these town halls, giving the players the spotlight and the national audience to really put their message out there. They'll have more of an impact than 280 characters in a tweet. Look, I've said this before, and I'll say it again. There are plenty of players who will not be in Orlando for a number of reasons. Those guys, like Kyrie, can easily keep the Black Lives Matter movement moving in the way they've been doing since now, and keep it going that way. Those that will be in Orlando can as well, just by different means. So win-win, no matter how you slice it. It doesn't need to be all one or the other.
Well, you're not obligated to be down there. You're going to lose part of your paycheck, and you can basically come up with reasons why you're not down there, and you won't be penalized anything. All right. Let's start with Kyrie for a second. Let's bash on him a little bit. He is not a player. He is when he became the vice president of the league, I was like, what the fuck? Something is going to happen. He is a team killer. We saw him leave the Cavs pretty much in a worse off position. Remember, the Celtics went to the Eastern Conference Finals basically without him, and then the season after they lose in 5 games. And now he's with the Nets for a few games this season where they're better, and now they're actually a little bit worse off. Kyrie is trying to be an NBA killer because he doesn't. I feel like it's for selfish reasons, but I think you vote on this, you're like, hey, we want to play. And then a lot of NBA players might be thinking, what did we vote for? These concerns are valid. These concerns are very valid. There's going to be a lot of contact in there. And I think the 100 to 150 page manifesto that the NBA wrote this past week at least helps lift a few of the COVID concerns. However, I think the time away from the families and the time being spent in a bubble, which could be for over 2.5 months, is a little concerning to some people. I would say probably maybe 30 to 40 people will probably not end up playing in the bubble from playoff teams. However, and it's not going to be too much missed. This is a different season, and I think the players should realize that. If they don't want to play, don't play, but don't ruin it for the rest of us.
Look, and also you gotta think about the players who are not going besides Kyrie. You got Kevin Durant, you got Steph Curry, you got Draymond Green. These are prominent names that are not going to be going to Orlando that can easily kind of keep things going for the Black Lives Movement off the court. And then you have the world's attention on you in Orlando. You got the ESPN, a ton of sports sponsors down there. And there are different ways you can keep the attention going. If Kyrie Irving wants to go to route of, say, Maya Moore and take time away from basketball to deal with social issues, I have no problem with that. Look, look, Kyrie Irving, if this is what he's passionate about, more power to him. I just feel like the approach he's taking is more self-serving to himself than has for the greater good. Because, like I said, if he had to ask questions about COVID, then that are actually legitimate questions, then I would be that's understandable. That's a little different than, oh, can you use the team facility when you don't even travel, when you could travel to the team facility in Red Hook, Brooklyn, and rehab
really
because you're here already, and it's good enough for your teammate Kevin Durant, who's been doing it for months. And I feel like player testing and keeping contact is a little more important than if you can drink an alcohol beverage in Disney World of all places. Like I said, I just think Kyrie Irving tries too hard to be the smartest guy in the room, and he looks worse off as a consequence. And this is one of those situations that if these was problems that was in the back of your mind, you should have addressed them before you voted to resume play.
Yeah, and as I mentioned before, he mentions all of these little things, and I just don't know what Kyrie wants. I don't even think Kyrie knows what Kyrie wants, and that's what's the most annoying thing about this.
Yep, we could go on forever, but we got to take it away from Anthony, or else he won't stop.
All right, let's that away, and let's talk about our final topic tonight, the NFL. Remember when we said on our last show 2 weeks ago that the NFL wasn't doing enough to combat racism? Well, spurned on by a video featuring every predominant black NFL player, Odell Beckham Jr., Patrick Mahomes, Michael Thomas, DeAndre Hopkins, Tyrann Mathieu, Ezekiel Elliott, and Saquon Barkley, the very next day, Roger Goodell, ladies and gentlemen, America's second least favorite commissioner after 5,000 years, released a video saying the following: "We, the NFL, condemn racism and the systematic oppression of black people. We, the NFL, admit we were wrong for not listening to NFL players earlier and encourage all to speak out and peacefully protest. We, the NFL, believe Black Lives Matter." The video was applauded and by a lot of players in the NFL and sort of criticized by our president for siding with people not respecting the flag. Bullshit. You know it's a winner. Jay, the NFL has pulled a complete 180 and has gained a lot of public trust on the issue. Let's talk about it.
Well, here's the thing. I think we talked separately, you and I, about, and I've talked to other people about this. What I found interesting about when the initial conversation the NFL had after its players started talking out about this issue. Because obviously it hits home for a large percentage of them and has been a daily part of their lives and their existence, since they were children. What I found interesting was the fact that the NFL initially did not say a damn thing, and it pissed off a lot of the staffers. And you had one video producer who reached out to Michael Thomas, and that kind of got the ball rolling. What I found interesting was that the video producer who got so pissed off was white. Mike Mintner's white, and Michael Thomas got all these guys together. They put this footage together. They put out this video. And in terms of everything that any athlete or group of athletes has put out on this matter, to me, this is the best use of their platform that I've seen in a very long time. I was not surprised that they did that Kaepernick was not mentioned. And to me, it was no coincidence that Goodell's video was basically a parroting almost as much as what the player's video said. And he didn't mention it either. And no disrespect to Cap, but I think mentioning him would have allowed those who still disagree with what the real issue is, would have allowed them to jump all over it and bury the actual message behind the videos. And that just could not be allowed to happen. Not now, not at this pivotal moment in history. For me, guys, the next step for the NFL is getting the old white men who own these teams to recognize that 4 years ago, they were on the wrong side of history. And contributions to the president's reelection fund be damned. They cannot afford to be on the wrong side again. Players are going to be kneeling en masse with their coaches alongside them. Black players, white players, together in greater solidarity over this issue than Kaepernick could have ever hoped for in 2016. The players are the NFL, and they are not going to be backing down from Black Lives Matter. It's gone on way too long, and now everyone is recognizing it. So if the owners don't side with the players, guys, then everything Goodell said in that video is going to be dismissed as the same old, same old. It'll be tossed out as further proof the owners do not care about those whose paychecks they sign, that they are too scared to lose a few fans, lose an advertiser or two, lose, a defense contract, and, afraid to piss off the cops who work security at their games and piss off the person currently residing at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Look, Steve Biscotti of the Ravens, Amy Shrunk of the Titans aside, most of the other owners have stayed silent in terms of public messaging, not showing any public support for the broader issues of systemic racism and police brutality, and specifically in response to many of their own players who have spoken out about it. Giving financial support like the $1 million Jed York of the Niners pledged toward social justice initiatives in conjunction with the Players Coalition is not enough in my mind. The owners need to be as invested as their players and coaches are in this, and they need to show it as publicly as they can. Society is watching them with a lot more scrutiny than ever before. My question to you guys is, and this will determine whether the NFL is to be believed or not, who will the owners reveal themselves to be? That's my question, and that's what I want to see. I'm going to be watching to see how that end of it plays out.
You know what, Jay? You pretty much said you said this better than I could have possibly worded it. I'm just going to be 100% honest. You think about this. At least 8 NFL team owners in 2016 donated close to $8 million to, and I'll say his name, Donald Trump's inaugural campaign in 2016. You think about Woody Johnson, who is a member of Trump's cabinet, has an ambassador to the UK. You talk about Shad Khan. You talk about Jerry Jones, who are conspicuously quiet.
Robert
This is a guy who never Robert Kraft. Jerry Jones in particular is a guy who never shies away from the camera. And the fact that he is noticeably quiet when his players have spoken up. FYI, remember Dak Prescott 4 years ago said that he would never kneel for the anthem. And now we want to know how much that has changed and how much was that driven by Jerry Jones, because remember, he was a young player kind of taking over Tony Romo's team at that time. Now, fast forward 4 years later, he's become a good player in his own right and got his own contract situation with the Cowboys, but that's besides the point. You think about Stan Kroenke from the Rams. You think about the late Bob McNair from the Texans. Remember his don't let the inmates run their asylum comment?
Run the prison.
4 years ago. I mean, you talk about the deal silence. And here's the thing: Roger Goodell works is just that's hell. It's Roger Goodell. We know he works for the owners, but again, this is coming from Roger Goodell. The fact that we're not seeing not too many owners coming out and saying anything is kind of a striking thing. And you think about this: these are owners who have handcuffed, particularly in the case of the Rams and the Chargers, have handcuffed whole communities now for stadiums and to get funding for that. And it's like, you mean tell me you can't use your power that you have and try to maybe listen to your players, listen to the community, maybe use your standing and push some kind of legislative changes that could be made in your community, which I think would go a long way than a $1 million donation, which is basically like dropping a bucket to get some water into a river for some of these owners. That's nothing to them. I think that's to be the best way to go about doing it. And in the case of, like I said, Jerry Jones, I don't want to beat up on him so much.
Beat up on him.
But let's be honest. I mean, he spoke out about kneeling and about respecting the anthem. Then he kneeled with everybody after his friend Donald Trump called the players SOBs and encouraged the owners to fire players who kneel during the anthem. And then he came out and again reversed his stance. Now he stands basically kind of disregarding the players, the African American players on his own team, and even got caught one time not taking his hat off during the national anthem. You keep in mind, the Dallas Cowboys are the only team that plays the national anthem before practice. If that ain't the weirdest thing in the world, and he didn't even take his hat off for that. So, like I said, the fact that Jerry Jones is hiding right now and haven't said or issued anything, and he's a guy who has no problem undermining his coach and his player personnel after games, and even doing radio stints during the week before a game. it speaks volumes about what's going on with the all boys club, as you said numerous times on the show. And until they start speaking out and making a change and taking a stance, then it's going to come off and it's going to come off as lip service, because right now the NFL doesn't have the track record as the NBA to lean on and say, look, this is what we've done as far as social change. You have been on the wrong side of history for 4 years, whether because you was intimidated by a guy you didn't want to own a team, and he decided to use his power to kind of get back at you, or whether you were just so afraid to lose a couple of bucks at the turnstiles, completely forgetting that you do have African Americans that come to the games also, that also line your pockets, that also wear the team memorabilia, that also go through the security checkpoints at stadiums, who work at the stadiums, who work at the popcorn venue, who do the venues, all these other things, and you try to disregard that because you're worried about losing a few bucks. Until those mentalities start changing, then the NFL is going to come off as lip service, because it's like, look, we don't trust you. We seen what you did when you had a chance to be on the right side of history. You blackballed the guy who started it all.
Okay, so before we continue, before I wrote this on Tuesday. Apparently, in a trend that we'll see in a few minutes, Trump made another statement on this last night and said, I was surprised at Roger Goodell that he would have done what he did and made the statement that he made. Nobody was even asking for it. Okay, so a few things here. Number one.
Go ahead and unpack that one, Rabbi. I want to hear.
I'm going to. So Roger Goodell and the NFL PR system did a very good move. It was a necessary move when all of the black athletes who make you probably the most money in your league, including your reigning Super Bowl MVP, speak out on this issue. It was a right move. It wasn't a move that nobody asked for. It was a move that Roger Goodell, again, is about 4 years too late doing. However, you have to start somewhere. Roger Goodell, I think, has had a very, very positive 3 to 4 months since COVID started. I think he's pushed a lot of the right buttons, and I'm going to be the sunny disposition person here. I think they're making progress towards what could be a watershed moment to get the NFL at least. They can't get to the NBA's level just because the NBA was kind of on the forefront of supporting Black Lives Matter and African American rights. However, they can get close. They have the national cachet, and I think what they're doing right now is amazing. However, and I hate to say this because I'm going to bring back the negative side before we move on. Talk to me in September. Talk to me in September. If they continue doing this, and it doesn't have to be everybody kneeling, but if a prominent amount of people are kneeling without any owner backlash, perfectly fine. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, and no backlash from the owners is better than, honestly, in some ways it might be better than them, posting the usual platitudes about backing their players. I would rather see them stay absolutely silent and let their players and coaches lead this movement and lead this conversation. That would be fine for me.
Wait, you want Jerry Jones to be silent? I'm in.
Yes.
I'm in. All right.
I would rather, unless they're going to publicly, like Biscotti has, like Strunk has, unless they're going to publicly say that they back any and all actions that their players and coaches are taking with regards to keeping this issue in the forefront of society's consciousness, I would rather they just shut up and not say a word either way.
All right.
I hope Stephen Ross and Dan Snyder is listening to you right now, because Stephen Ross has a really bad habit of saying the worst things at a really bad time. But also, these are two guys I mentioned that have, they have contributed to Trump's campaign also. And in the case of Dan Snyder, he literally tried to push legislators to get the Redskins a new stadium a couple years ago, which drew a lot of backlash. And I'm like, hey, you know what? You can help if you really care that much, that you can do that, then you can push legislators that can maybe go towards social change on that front. But like I said, Roger Goodell works for the owners, and Roger Goodell saying something is a little different than his bosses saying something publicly, which is, like I said, I want to see actions as well as the words. I mean, the words is one thing, but I want to see the actions behind it.
That is true, but he is the public face of the NFL. So yes, the owners work for him, but the owners, again, they would be better served to stay silent here than to say anything at all. That could mean a lot. And again, anything that gets Jerry Jones to shut up about, I'm all for it. All right.
Yeah, and Dan Snyder has enough issues on his plate already. He should not say anything, period.
Dan Snyder needs to shut up. Okay. We're going to talk about two things that are the fallout from this to end tonight. Let's go to Bizarro World and mention Goodell again, as when he was asked about Colin Kaepernick not being on a team, Goodell encouraged NFL teams to sign Cap. He also said he welcomes his opinion to help make the NFL make better decisions to guide communities. And again, this is why Rob Manfred has shot past Roger Goodell for the #1 most hated commissioner. I don't think any commissioner has done a better job over the last 3 months in public perception. All right, so
Adam Silver.
Well, no. I've said it's a 180. Adam Silver has always been at least in the clouds as #1, although
all right. I needed you to clarify and quantify that.
Yeah. No. And yeah. So anyway, Anthony, the Cap statements, does it mean or do anything, and what is the future for Kaepernick?
It means a lot that Roger Goodell did mention Colin Kaepernick and said those things. By the way, I know you probably didn't mention, but President Trump also said that he is in support of Kaepernick return to the NFL, which I think is BS, because it's like Matt Kellerman said this perfectly. If when a politician is lying, his lips are moving. So I think we know
he basically went to Hampton last night and downgraded all of this stuff. So
yeah, but look, I look at it like this. Colin Kaepernick, I'd say is vindicated as far as his movement and what he was trying to bring attention to. And I think about Muhammad Ali, and I might have mentioned this a few weeks ago, maybe I didn't, but he did not want to go to Vietnam, and he fought it. He literally went to court. He lost 3 years of his livelihood. He could not box. They wouldn't give him a boxing license. He was stripped of his belts. And then we saw how bad Vietnam was turning out. We saw the pictures of a naked little girl, badly burnt, run in a very popular photo that I've seen in Time Magazine archives. We saw that. We saw peaceful protesting college students at Kent State getting gunned down by a National Guard. We saw how bad Vietnam was turning out to where Muhammad Ali was basically vindicated in why he didn't want to fight in a war in the first place, and he was able to get his life back and resume his boxing career after 3 years, and he became heavyweight champion again. As far as Colin Kaepernick, I don't think he's going to be the quarterback that he was in 2012 when he led the 49ers to the Super Bowl. Yeah. Of course not. And he's been out of the league for almost 4 years now. But the dynamic of when he started this protest have changed in this country. You think about it, Donald Trump, for what it's worth, hijacked his protest and turned it into something totally different. He rode that wave into the White House, for better or for worse. And now you think about it, 4 years later, the exact opposite has taken place in this country. Civil unrest. We have a pandemic. The economy is really bad. Has been as bad as it ever been. There are no sports. There are no distractions to take your attention away from the real world right now. And this is what a lot of people are finally seeing. A lot of people are finally realizing for the first time, wow, there's a lot of things that are wrong with this country. And now it's kind of like, okay, now we see why Colin Kaepernick did what he did. And like LeBron James said it, this is why he kneeled. And a lot of people have said that, actually. But now that people are starting to see, okay, this is why he chose to kneel the way he did. Now they're finding out, okay, a former Green Beret gave him the idea to kneel during the national anthem because that is actually a sign of respect for fallen soldiers as far as the military. From what I know, when they present an American flag to the next of kin, they kneel before that person before presenting that flag. So there is some symbolism to it. Unfortunately, you did have Trump. You did have some of these conservative pundits that kind of came in and hijacked that whole movement and turned it into something else. Now it feels like 4 years later, what Kaepernick was trying to bring attention to, he's vindicated. Now, does it get back into the league in the NFL that he can resume his career? That remains to be seen. But what he was trying to do, as far as being on the right side of history, I think he's being validated to quite a bit. Well, everything that's been going on.
Yeah, look, I'm going to talk about this more from the football standpoint. Because when we first talked about this on the show, I did talk about it as much from the football standpoint. Look, I hope this opens the door for him to get back in the NFL, and I hope it will be easier now since the climate has changed. Look, he's not going to be getting starting quarterback money if he returns to the NFL this season, mostly because every QB1 slot is locked in, and the guy with the first dibs on any opening is likely to be Cam Newton, still unsigned at the moment, who has a better starting quarterback resume overall than Kaepernick. However, I think he could probably beat on a lot of the guys who are QB2 on teams. There are anywhere from 10 to 20 teams where he could be an improvement over the current situation. I do think it has to be the right situation from a football standpoint. Is he a fit for the offense that the team runs? But if he's open to that and a team is open to that, I can see him getting back in this year. Is there going to be some media attention? Sure. He's the CEO emeritus of the Black Lives Matter movement. So he's going to get asked about it, about, everything that's happened, about his vindication, and maybe 100 other questions in his first media day session. But that is going to die down as the season goes on, mostly because the media's focus will invariably shift to football, and also because the backup quarterback doesn't really get called to the post-game media session. But it's going to take a coach with the guts to go to his GM and say, this guy could be a good fit on our team. For that GM to show the same amount of guts and go to his owner, and for that owner to show some spine and approve it. The fact that Goodell did come out in support of any team making the decision to put Cap on their roster and encouraging them to do so was telling. You guys have heard, seen the story about Pete Carroll in Seattle, said he's been contacted, in the past by Cap people. He strikes me as a coach with enough clout to do this. And guys, think about this. Geno Smith is currently Russell Wilson's backup. I'm just saying. Cap could probably win that backup competition. I hope he gets a shot. Look, the NFL owes him a legitimate one to resurrect his career if he wants to be back in the league.
See, here's the one problem, though, with all of that. By the way, do not insult the good name of Geno Smith, the man who his consecutive start streak. Thank you, Ben McAdoo. Kaepernick is a very good quarterback, has been a very good quarterback, but hasn't played a game in 4 years. I know that the Los Angeles, San Diego, whatever they are, Chargers head coach Anthony Lynn said he fits the system and he's one of the people they're going to bring in for a tryout. But again, I do think that, first of all, Cam Newton should be getting spots over Colin Kaepernick left and right and left and right. And I think Cam has also, I think, been a little biased because of his basic, his repertoire. And again, I think I've always thought this, but I think a white quarterback with the same repertoire and the same attitude that Cam would have a better shot. That's just me. But I think with Kaepernick, he has to, again, personally, for his cause, he's tremendously vindicated. And even though he's not technically CEO emeritus of Black Lives Matter, he is the
current iteration.
He's the public face of it, and he can almost be the president of that in any way, shape, or form. However, Kaepernick had asked for very unreasonable contract demands for the 49ers in the spot. He would probably would have had to compete for the starter's role. Kaepernick, and I know you've said this, Jay, you think Kaepernick has matured a lot over the last few years and will accept the role that he's in. However, remember when he had his public workout and he said, hey, everybody sign me. I got this, after he went for about 8 to 10 minutes because he thought the NFL's process was a sham. However, I think if Kaepernick kind of swallows his pride, he can definitely be a backup in this league. But there is a lot of stuff that Kaepernick needs to do because not too many quarterbacks who haven't been in the league for 3 seasons end up playing it down. Just remember that. All right.
Yeah. I know. Before we move on, I just got like this. I think it'd be a little different from 4 years ago. We saw Buffalo Bill fans hanging a doll for a Kaepernick jersey in the parking lot. Remember that little incident when the Bill fans was hanging a doll with a Colin Kaepernick jersey? I think that's a little different than now, 4 years later, when you see protesters wearing Colin Kaepernick jerseys. Like I said, it's like he's been vindicated in the fact that he's not looked at as someone who protested America anymore. He's looked at somebody who protested something that is definitely wrong with what has been going on in America. And now that the attention has been drawn to that, like I said, it's a different dynamic that he'll be stepping into if he is to get back in the National Football League.
All right, we move on. Finally tonight, let's revisit Drew Brees' comments from a few weeks ago saying that he doesn't get people disrespecting the flag. His mea culpas, I almost was going to get that right, caught the ire of President Trump on Twitter, and he mentioned it again last night in that Hannity interview. Damn it for doing that on Wednesday after I've written the script. No more interviews with Trump on Wednesdays or ever. Trump is definitely not a fan of that. Brees responded to Trump by saying this was never about the flag. It's been a good 2 weeks for Drew Brees in the public perception, but is this a is this a full redemption, Jay?
Look, he's on the road to redemption, and obviously barking back at Trump put actions behind that apology. Look, I said when we first discussed this 2 weeks ago that I felt Brees would do the work to repair the self-inflicted wound to his reputation because of who he is and what he has done in New Orleans over the last 15 years. Look, I know Anthony and plenty of others didn't put much stock in Brees' apology, and I understand why it was chalked up to the whole you walked it back because you got called out for a thing. But I'm glad to see that his conversations with teammates, with coaches, with people in the media have been humbling, positive, and educational for him, though I still say he has a ways to go to repair things and redeem himself for seriously stepping in it. 2 things stood out for me with Brees in the aftermath. The first was his conversation with Shannon Sharpe after the Hall of Fame tight end took the Saints quarterback to task big time on his FS1 show, Undisputed, calling his apology meaningless and his original statement, whatever he hoped to accomplish with it, he failed miserably. Now, Brees, to his credit, reached out to Sharpe after that show. They had a conversation. And after that conversation, where Brees apologized to Sharpe and everyone else. And then on the next show after that conversation, Sharpe said, quote, Drew, we need strong white men, powerful, influential like you to help us get the ball across the finish line. I think you understand that. I think the blowback you got was deserved, but I also believe you have a great heart, and I believe you will make right about the wrong that you spoke. Now, look, these are 2 people who really didn't know each other beforehand. They got together. They had a tough but necessary conversation and came at it with a better understanding of each other, this issue, and what they could do going forward. The second thing, obviously, and, Rabbi, you mentioned it at the intro, was Brees rebuking President Trump's tweet saying that Brees didn't need to change his stance on kneeling. And I think it was a pretty big action to put behind his words for Brees. This is what I was hoping for from Drew in the aftermath of his original comment. Basically, not forget about just walking back his stupid-ass comments previously, but walking forward what's going to be his recognition of the issue, recognition of what he needs, to learn about it, what he needs to do to bring it forward to help people. And this is his quote. And I thought it was perfect. Through my ongoing conversations with friends, teammates, and leaders in the Black community, I realize this is not an issue about the American flag. It has never been. We can no longer use the flag to turn people away or distract them from the real issues that face our Black communities. We did this back in 2017, and regretfully, I brought it back with my comments this week. We must stop talking about the flag and shift our attention to the real issues of systemic racial injustice, economic oppression, police brutality, and judicial and prison reform. We are at a critical junction in our nation's history. If not now, then when? as a white community need to listen and learn from the pain and suffering of our Black communities. We must acknowledge the problems, identify the solutions, then put this into action. The Black community cannot do it alone. This will require all of us. And all I can say to that is, Drew, keep it up. To me, this is how you redeem yourself and start proving your doubters that your apology was in fact sincere. The Black Lives Movement needs more high-profile white athletes out in front of this, marching in lockstep with their Black brothers and sisters. And you know what? He turned it around. I'm glad to see that he has at least started to turn it around. He still has a ways to go, Anthony.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like I said, a few weeks ago, his initial comments and his apology, I didn't think it was sincere initially because I felt like, well, he said the same thing 4 years ago. The difference is the backlash wasn't there 4 years ago as it was 2 weeks ago when he initially said it. And it was like, wait, everything that's going on and this is what you take away from it? Are you kidding? But I look at it like this. He still has a long ways to go. Yeah, it's great that he tweeted at Donald Trump, basically distancing himself from that because you got to think about it. It came back to Trump's rhetoric that kind of started that whole thing in the first place. They think about Fox News and how Laura Ingraham was saying that he should have an opinion. I think we can go into another show about that one. But I think that Drew took a big step and distancing himself from that and trying to explain that, you know what, that was wrong. That was the wrong angle to take. And that we need to do something about it now. Look, it's great that his team, that he's on the same page with his teammates. He talked to Shannon Sharp and Spike Lee even, but he has to understand that what he plays is a huge African American population, the city of New Orleans, Louisiana, that went through a very tough time 15 years ago with Katrina, particularly some of the more lower income neighborhoods happen to be in Louisiana, the Lower Ninth Ward in particular. I have a friend that lives in New Orleans also. And it was like, you understand that those comments that he said really did hurt a lot of people, more than he probably ever realized. And you understand that, and I hope Drew did see this. I hope he has seen this in the last few weeks. The people that fought alongside your grandparents for this nation were African Americans. And they didn't come back to the same heroes welcome and the same opportunities and the same equal rights that your grandfathers were afforded when they came back home. It's basically like they were fighting. Like, I think of Jesse Owens, for that matter. He won 4 gold medals in Berlin and pretty much shout out the mystique of Nazi supremacy in Adolf Hitler's own backyard, and he wasn't even invited to the White House. It was one of the most tragic things that could have ever happened. And you think about Bill Russell, who was fighting. And I wish I didn't find his quote in time for the show, but 50 years later, he's still fighting a battle that he was fighting 50 years ago when he was being called the N-word and in front of fans he was playing for in Boston, which has his history of prejudice and racism that has kind of come to the forefront now. And then you look at it like this, is that Drew Brees really did hurt a lot of people when he made those comments, myself included, because my father fought in the Army Reserve. My uncle fought in Vietnam and came back sick and did not have the same affordable medical help that maybe someone else who were white came back to. So you understand that, like I said, I really do hope Drew Brees sees this, that the same people, the same African Americans who fought alongside his grandparents is still fighting for that same freedom for a country they probably defended to this day. And that you have a large African American fan base who was chanting F Drew Brees after he made those comments. It's like, look, your teammates, Spike Lee, Shannon Sharp, C-celebrities, that's one thing. These fans who wore your jersey, who embraced you as one of their own, and who was so thankful for all the help you did and trying to rebuild the city of New Orleans, which was underwater at one point. And it was almost like you spat in their face with that comment. It's like, you have a very long way to. Those are the people you have to make it up to more than anything, because those are the people who have supported you from day one, from the moment you signed with the New Orleans Saints, and there was doubts of whether or not you can play healthy again because you were coming off a shoulder injury. So, like I said, he's on the right path. But like I said, for those fans, those are the people that he really is going to have to make it up to, because those are the people who was hurt deeper by those statements than any of his teammates could possibly be. His teammates are professional, but the people who failed to USGA the Superdome 8 times a year, and even the playoffs, and even went to bat and boycotted the Super Bowl when remember the blown pass interference call. I mean, yeah, but I mean, you gotta say those are not just fans. Those are people. Those are human beings. Those are African Americans. Those are proud Americans who want the same equality that your grandfathers fought for so violently. And like I said, I hope Drew Brees understand that those are the people that he's gonna have to make it up to more than anything, more than anyone in that locker room.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Rabbi, I mean, one of the things that Shannon Sharp did say that I read in the text of their conversation is that the reason it cut so deep within New Orleans is because there is probably no white quarterback who has a bigger black following anywhere in the NFL than Drew Brees.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. First of all, some final thoughts before we wrap up this show. Number one, isn't it so nice that President Trump brings people together? Nice that he mentioned it with Goodell. We mentioned it with Drew Brees. We mentioned it with Kaepernick, which, by the way, he said after he got elected. This was the season. This was in the 2017 season that he had said that. Isn't it nice that President Trump brings the whole entire world together? That's your best PR.
The whole world together against him. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. I didn't say how it brought him together. And also, I know Anthony mentioned it, and you kind of mentioned it blasé, but the fact that Drew Brees is such a likable personality who said something completely fucking stupid. And I think, as I've said before, once we get past this era of social distancing, I think all NFL, MLB, and every professional athlete needs to have somebody walking with them at all times in a PR role to be like, oh, you're going to say that? Don't say that. Sometimes no comment is better than comment. But I think one of the big things is Spike Lee speaking out for him, and even Shaquille O'Neal. These two people don't have to do it. Again, as we mentioned before with the Roger Goodell comments, he didn't have to say it apparently. So these celebrities don't have to defend him. That's why he is a nice guy, and that's why he's going to get past this. Even though, again, as you mentioned, Anthony, it's going to take a long time to get past it. All right, guys. With that said, we're done. Thank you for joining us tonight. And the road to reopening may be on course. The keyword is may. Let's hope we actually have some more sports and sports action to talk about soon. Get it done, baseball. Get it done. All right.
Done.
For Jay Kaplan and Anthony Strait, I am Stephen Rabinowitz. At 9 p.m. each Thursday, you can catch us at facebook.com/onthesportslines. And if you want to comment about any lists you want to see or anything that'll help us, get through these times before live sports begin, hopefully with the NBA in July, please do that at facebook.com/onthesportslines. This show will be up within the next 24 hours, Jay, at youtube.com/onthesportslines. And do we have a Twitter page?
Yeah, we'll be tweeting the link out to that show once we put it up on your YouTube channel at ONTH Sportslines on Twitter.
All right. For Anthony Strait and Jay Kaplan, my name is Stephen Rabinowitz. Good night. Stay safe.
Good night, everyone.